We'll get started. Okay, here we go. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tim Fuchs with the National Council on Independent Living. I want to welcome you all to our latest ILNet teleconference and webinar, Supporting Youth in Transition, How SILs Can Contract for Youth Transition Services. As always, today's presentation is brought to you by the ILNet Training and Technical Assistance Project. ILNet is operated through a partnership among ILRU in Houston, Texas, Nickel here in Washington, D.C., Utah State University Center for Persons with Disabilities in Utah, and April in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Support for the project is provided by the Administration on Community Living at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So today's call is being recorded, as it always is, so that we can archive it on ILRU's website. So they catalog all the training material, all the live trainings and webinars that we do through the ILNet. So we're currently in presentation mode, but we encourage you to ask questions today. We've got quite a bit of time set aside, over 20 minutes for your questions. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. There's a couple ways to ask questions, and I'll remind you all of those before we take each Q&A break. First of all, and the easiest way to do it is if you're on the webinar today, to use the Q&A feature. And that's right there in the middle of your menu bar at the bottom of your screen. If you don't see your menu bar, you can just hover your cursor over the bottom center of your screen and it should pop up. So you can type questions there. You can do that anytime during the call today. We will wait until the Q&A break to address them though, but just know that we have gotten them and we do see them. There are a couple alternatives if you can't access that feature for any reason. If you're on the full screen cart today, you can type your question there. I'm logged in there and I'll see questions. So again, let me mention that the captioning, of course, is available through the Zoom platform. I imagine most of you are seeing that right now. If you don't, you can turn it on and it'll display at the bottom of the screen. You can manipulate the size of the closed caption by pressing the upward arrow on the captioning. You can make it larger or smaller. But if that's not large enough for you, or you want to manipulate, say, the size of the font or the contrast, then I'd recommend that you all use the full screen card at StreamText. That URL is a little too long to read out on the live call. But it was sent to you in that confirmation email, the same confirmation email where you got the connection instructions for today's call. So that is all a very long way of saying that there's a chat feature there and you're welcome to use that. There's also a chat feature on Zoom, of course, and you're welcome to use that to send comments or to let us know if you're having any technical issues. If you have a content question about the webinar, we prefer that you use the Q&A tab. All right. The only other thing I wanted to mention for this morning's or for this afternoon's housekeeping is just when we finish today's webinar, you will see an evaluation form pop up on your screen. It doesn't take long to fill out, and I really hope that you all will complete that. If you're participating in a small group today, that's fine. We'd love to see that, but I hope that each of you as an individual will complete that evaluation. If you really don't have time after today's call, or maybe you're watching the webinar on a coworker's computer, the link to the evaluation form was also included in that same confirmation email. So please do fill that out. We really want your feedback. We put a lot of time and effort into going through those evaluations and looking for improvements for our program. And we can't do that if you don't tell us what you think. So be on the lookout for that. All right. That is officially the end of the housekeeping for today. Let me go ahead to slide 3 here and introduce our presenters. I want to thank Seth and Joe for agreeing to be with us today and to put together yet another presentation for the ILNet. We're big fans of the work that they have done and are doing at Lehigh Valley Center. Seth Hodorowski is Director of Transition Services there at LVCIL and has helped to shape many of the programs that we'll talk about today to support young people in transition. Joe Mitchner is the Director of Employment Services at LVCIL, and same deal, has shaped, runs many of the programs that, that they've got going there to support people looking for employment. We've worked with Seth and Joe quite a lot over the last year, as they have, over a year. They first came to my attention through ILRU because they had worked on a training with some of the folks at ILRU related to youth transition and employment. And they were also part of our presentation team at the big youth transition on-site training that we did in Denver back in April of 2017. And then over the past year, they have facilitated a learning collaborative through the IMF on, guess what, youth transition. And that's been a really fantastic experience. We've got about 22 people from 12 different centers all around the country that are working together and closely with Seth and Joe to build and improve their youth transition programs. And that's been a really cool experience. So I've really enjoyed getting to know you guys, and I'm so thankful that you've said yes to yet another one of our presentations, and I know how much you have to offer. And for those people that have not been able to come to those on-site trainings or participate in the collaborative, some of this is going to be really new, and that's why we wanted to get it out to folks. So thanks for being willing to do this. Let me go ahead to slide 4 here before I kick it over to Seth and Joe. And I'm just going to walk through the objectives. You probably recognize these from the original training announcement. But this is what I offer you all today. So today you're going to learn about strategies for establishing relationships and collaborations with voc rehab, school districts, and other organizations, steps to set up and management pre-employment transition services, aka Pre-ETS for youth, examples of funding opportunities, partnerships, and contracts to maintain programs and services for youth in transition, and finally, examples of successful programs and services that demonstrate how the IL philosophy is integral to providing transition services for young adults. All right. So with that, I'm going to click over to slide 5 and turn it over to Seth to keep us going here. Seth?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Tim. Definitely appreciate it. I know Joe shares in the sentiment of, we are thrilled and humbled to be working with ILNet again. And, we really find our collaborative efforts here just incredible. We appreciate the work that you do and that everybody does to be able to do all these things. And just thrilled that you keep asking us back. We must be doing something all right. Yeah, my name is Seth Hodoreski. I'm the Director of Transition Services here at LBCIL. I've been here for coming up on 10 years. And
I'm Joe Mitchner, Director of Employment Services here at LBCL, and I've been here coming up on 8 years.
So our heads may bob in and out from time to time. That may look a little funny, but we wanted to be in one room to kind of feed off each other and work with each other here a little bit. But to start this all off, we wanted to just give you an idea of who we were, who LBCIL is, and maybe our timeline a little bit for what we've done in transition services, and kind of give you the background a little bit. We thought that was really important. We're located here in the Lehigh Valley, Allentown, Pennsylvania. And we have a combination of rural, suburban, urban, a little bit of everything here in the Lehigh Valley. We're located just north of Philadelphia, just south of New York. It's an hour and a half to the beach in New Jersey. So we're really sitting in a prime location where there's a lot of industry and a lot of things going on. We were established in 1990 with the signing of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And our transition services started a number of years later, back in 2008. That's when we started with all of our transition stuff. We've been doing it for about 10 years now, and it has taken some time to really get to where we need to be and what we need to do. Our current LBCIL budget we're at about $3.7 million a year, and that is overall in all of our programming. Back in 2010 and 2011, we were at about $940,000 for the entire SIL. Our current transition and employment, we call it T&E budget, is currently at $1.5 million. So, it has been incredible and has shown a lot of growth. And that has really helped to expand our entire center with everything and all that we've done. The same goes for our consumers and what we've seen. We work with, in the last year, our fiscal year 2017, 2018, we had 1,217 consumers that we worked with. And 715 of those were our transition and employment consumers. So, that coming from our total consumers served back in 2010 and 2011, we were at 370 total consumers for the entire SIL. So you can kind of see what the entire growth that we have got. And back then, we only had 15 transition and employment consumers. So that's an increase of like 700. And as far as our staffing, the incredible increases that we've had there as well, we currently have about 55, I think we just hired a couple more people, 55 plus. And our current transition and employment staff are around 26. And that comes from when we started all of this, back in 2008, we had just one staff. So, the incredible growth has really come for us, and we've seen a lot of that, especially with our transition and employment, and that has really impacted us, our entire center. I think that. All right.
Tim, you can go to the next slide.
So the background for all of that, and really why we decided to do transition services was way back when in those early years, we were really inundated with phone calls. It was usually the fall after the summer, when the young adult graduated that previous year, and we would get the phone call from the parent saying that their son or daughter has just graduated and they were sitting at home and doing nothing. So people were looking for resources, information, programs, all of that kind of stuff, and didn't know where to go and where to turn. They didn't have the information and the resources. Parents were also telling us that their young adults were sitting home and they were really losing all of those skills that they gained in school. So think about how many years a young adult is going to school and they're sitting home and doing nothing, losing all those skills. Parents would say, we don't know where to begin. There's so much out there, or not. There's possibly nothing out there. We don't know where to start, who to talk to, what information and what resources out there, who can help us with all that. And one of the other things that we saw was, as we got into things a little bit more, was limited expectation for these students in school and what they were being asked to do as far as work goes. We often talk about the young adult that would go out and fill salt shakers as a work experience. It's like, that's great if you like to do that kind of thing, but is that it? Should there be more? Or we have the stories of the young adult who was being told that you're really good at stocking shelves. Maybe you should do that for the rest of your life. So it gets into these notions of stigma and all that kind of stuff. We could probably talk about that for a long time as well. And then we really saw these young adults that we were working with as our future consumers, our future board members, possibly our future staff. So we felt it was really important to get that whole idea of transition out there. It kind of being along the lines of what SILs are about and what they were born to do, what Ed Roberts was doing and all of that. That whole history piece is important, but it's in that same kind of thinking with where things are, with where young adults are. So that was really important to us as we were kind of going. And as we started to develop this and to really develop a culture here in the Lehigh Valley SIL, we really found that it was a perfect fit for our SIL. And that was just, like I said, really took us to a whole other place. Go ahead, Tim. So as far as the transition services here in the Lehigh Valley SIL, we really have seen, like I said, significant growth in our transition and employment services over the past 9 going on 10 years. And it has really helped us to develop really just about every other part of what's going on here at the SIL. We have all kinds of other programs and housing and supports coordination, and we do a lot of different things, and all of those are kind of all those programs, including our transitions in employment, are really intertwined with one another. So, we really look at it as a one-stop shop where a young adult can come in and maybe work on employment and transition-related skills, but then get to a point where maybe they need some housing support, or maybe they need supports coordination support, or maybe they need some social aspects as well. So, that has really helped to grow every aspect of the SIL. And, to the point where we've been fortunate to work with a number of other centers, and, both in the state of Pennsylvania here and on the national level too. Tim already talked a little bit, and we're going to talk briefly a little bit more about the learning collaborative that we're doing and that type of thing. So, to get this notion of these transition services out there more has been really awesome. And a lot has to do with our relationships and that type of work. And we'll get into that a little bit more, in a little bit here. But we've really found that the relationships and primarily our relationship with our local our vocational rehab office has been really what it's been about for us, and being able to help take things to another level. And with this advent of these pre-employment transition services that are out there now, and that too has really taken us to another level here.
Yeah. So I'll just add, everything Seth's talking about is really meaningful for us, because I know when I started in the field of vocational rehabilitation 17 years ago at this point, a lot of the services that we're doing now and a lot of the things that are happening now would have never happened back then. So it's a really exciting time to be getting into this stuff. It's a really meaningful time to get into it. I know, years ago when I worked with somebody, sometimes when they leave high school or college, they would fall off a cliff, and they wouldn't know, as Seth said, they wouldn't know where to go and what to do or what resources were out there. And what I'm really excited about, I think the most exciting part for me, is that a lot of these new services that have come up in the last few years are really helping bridge the gaps for people and keeping people connected. And as Seth said too, who better to do it other than a SIL, with the idea of empowerment and consumer control at the backing of everything, and not letting people fall into dead-end jobs and things like that, I think is really important. And speaking of that exciting work, Tim, if you want to flip to the next slide. Just to talk briefly about the learning collaborative that we've been taking part in this last year, and this has been really cool. Along the lines of all the new services for young adults who are transitioning, we had the privilege to be a part, and still going, of a collaborative between 12 SILs from around the country, working together to either start up or enhance their current services for young adults transitioning. So this is a collaborative approach to everything. We've been following what is called a program-centered plan. If you're familiar with person-centered planning, we pretty much took person-centered planning and applied it to how we're developing our programs. So, writing goals and doing a lot of discovery work, and then creating an action plan out of that. Each of the SILs involved are doing their own program-centered plan, but what collaborative is, we're all dealing with a lot of those same things. How do you deal with transportation? How do you establish a relationship with voc rehab? How do you establish a relationship with the schools in your area, especially if, like in our area, the schools are so used to doing everything themselves? So that collaborative has been really powerful, and we're hoping to see more of those. We had an event here in Allentown where we kicked everything off, and then we've been doing monthly phone calls and webinars to keep things going. And by the end of this year, each of the SILs will have their own program-centered plan to build off and work through for the next year. So just wanted to mention a little bit about that. We're super excited to be about it. We hope that there'll be more of those type of things available for SILs everywhere. Go ahead, Tim.
So I'm sure everyone has talked about the fact of transition being the fifth core service for SILs and all of that, and how important that is, and what that can be done alone with. But we wanted to really highlight some of the stuff, the national trends that are going on, and some of the important work that is really considered game changers at this point. Through WIOA, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, which provides for pre-employment transition services, which states that OVR, the vocational rehab, really has to focus on pre-employment transition services and has to put 15% of their budget to young adults who are still in school, ages 14 to 21. And that could be school or post-secondary. They could be enrolled in post-secondary as well. And this has really been a game changer for us, especially over the last 2 years or so. There's really a lot going on, a lot of opportunities for young adults under this. And with them looking at with VR, looking at options for more things around post-secondary, more things around self-advocacy, more things around independent living skills. There seems to be more understanding around the fact that work is not just work. Work is everything else around work. Like, you got to be able to cash your check, and you got to be able to take the bus, and you got to be able to set your alarm and do all those other things too. And it all kind of goes hand in hand. So, with plus the fact that it provides for opportunities for like paid work experiences where a young adult can get paid for some of the work that they're doing, and that being super important. There's been a lot of research out there that says that those paid work experiences is the #1 predictor of a young adult getting employment when they're done with school, or those evening, weekend, summer jobs and those types of things when you were younger. And being paid to do that really is impactful on a learning for a young adult. And just to promote the fact that these services are not meant to replace school services. There are a lot of programs and things going on out there too, where OVR is working directly, or VR is working directly with school districts on particular programs, but it's not really meant to replace it. It's really meant to supplement and complement each other. And it's really all young adults should get through VR at this point, and they're looking to really assess who can be out there working, and who can be doing things, and probably seeing if people could be staying out of sheltered workshops. There's a push there as well. So they're kind of looking through all of that. But again, it's really meant to make that transition more seamless, bring people together, provide those resources, and do those kind of things.
I just wanted to throw out there, as us talking about WIOA and things like that, and mentioning the 5th core service. So what we're going to be talking about today is not only services that are being funded by and provided through our core service dollars, but we're also going to be talking about services that are supplemented by other funding sources. So like voc rehab and the school districts and things like that. There's only so much we realize. Most SILs are in this boat. There's only so much we can do through our core dollars that may or may not have changed in the last decade or two. So, finding a way to supplement those funds and to be able to do some things through your core dollars, but then to also look for alternate funding sources to do some of these things is totally appropriate and okay. We're not going to spend time during this presentation breaking down which service comes through which funding source. It might be obvious. We might say specifically voc rehab. But if you have more questions about that, just ask them. And we're happy to I know that's a big question around the country whenever we talk to folks, is that how are you doing this and what's coming from core dollars and what's coming from alternate funding sources. So just wanted to throw that out.
You can go to the next one, Tim, please. And we already talked a little bit about some of this, and I won't go into too much more here, because we did talk a little bit about this on the last slide. But there are a number of different programs and things. Here in Pennsylvania, our local VR office is doing things like transition academies, and there's different summer programs being run through VR at like Penn State University and other programs like that. So there really is this push to really get more of these pre-employment transition services out there with different programs as well. So you can probably move on, Tim. Thanks.
All right. So as slide 11 there talks about, quite sure many of you have questions about voc rehab and want to have a discussion. Probably we could spend the whole presentation just discussing voc rehab. We realize that here in Allentown, we're in a pretty fortunate position. We've had a long-standing relationship with our local VR office. Our executive director here at LBCL, Amy Beck. Amy Beck gets a shout out every presentation. That's a matter of fact. She's had a long-standing relationship with the district administrator of our voc rehab office. But it wasn't until about 2011. Well, I'm sorry. They had agreed to do sign language interpretation referral service a few years before, but it wasn't until 2011 that we started doing specifically supported employment services in partnership with voc rehab. So despite the long-standing relationship, it really was initiated by an innovation and expansion grant through VR that we were able to start our supported employment services. And we're going to get into a lot of the different programs we do, but this one in particular was really meaningful and really helped us develop a lot from it, because it got us into the door with voc rehab as far as providing services and showing them that doing things with the backing of the independent living philosophy and doing things in a mindset of consumer control and empowerment actually produced really good results. And that was something that they were hesitant about, because, you know, most voc rehabs are about the numbers, get people in jobs and get them going. But really working hard and finding a way to prepare people for jobs and to allow them to explore and to find a job that they're really motivated to do, or to get them on a track to an ultimate career. We were able to show pretty quickly through an I&E grant that that was possible to do and would produce more long-standing, long-term positive results that voc rehab was looking for. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about our fee-for-service ventures, which have just exploded in the past 2 years. Really starting with another program that came through a grant from another state agency, but that built into a lot of different things. So we'll be hitting all of that. Okay, and I just have to mention that, you know, I realize very much so that around the country, not everybody has a great relationship with voc rehab. And I think that's something that we have to find a way to work through and work around. And I know if you're in that position where you've been trying and you're getting that door closed on you, it can be very frustrating. Seth and I are very open to trying to work with folks to try to bridge that relationship and bridge that gap. We understand that there's a lot of history between SILS and voc rehab. Some of it's, you know, adversarial for sure. But, you know, we found that working with voc rehab has helped so many consumers reach their goals, and that it has been a really positive experience for the last few years.
So schools are the other big area where we really made an impact over the years here. And I mean, we probably have close to 30 or so school districts here in the Lehigh Valley that we are trying to work with at any given time. And we have found that that is really important to you know, to help support them and then support us, and that whole collaborative piece. If folks are familiar there's different programs out there that schools are working on with different agencies and all that type of thing. If people are familiar with Project Search, you know, that might be good to check out. And that is something that is Project searches all over the country, and I think all over the world at this point. But it's a school-based program that is more in line with real life work, and it is something that is you know, a great program for young adults with disabilities, and you know, something that we have worked on and have modeled some programming over the years as well. But opportunities to collaborate with schools on things like that and others are just great for students, great for the community, for everything. We have really found that presentations and getting into classrooms and talking to teachers and having that opportunity is a great way to get information out about the SIL, what a SIL does, and all of those type of things. It's one of the things that we found out early. We need to get out in the classrooms and talk to students. And there's some really neat stuff going on with the pre-employment transition services where group presentations can be done in school and paid for through OVR. So through contracted work with them. So we have really taken advantage of that to be able to get out there. IEP work is a great opportunity for a SIL to get involved in things with schools. I mean, who knows advocacy better than a SIL? Who knows the community better than a SIL? And especially in the transition realm, and be able to provide information and resources at IEPs can be very just incredible. And I mean, you can take it to a whole other level with things and things that we've been able to do here through some of our programming that we'll talk a little bit about later. But we've contracted with schools to provide things like independent living skills. We've had schools reach out to us to see, they knew what we did and saw what we were doing in employment and independent living skills, and we're seeing if there was the ability to contract to provide individualized services for students based on what the school was looking to do. And then, like one of the great areas that we have found that needs a lot, that could use support and an opportunity to work with, are the cyber schools. Pretty much the students there need the social outlet. They tend to be home on their computers learning, and they need that. We've been able to find some great opportunities with a number of the cyber schools here and contracting with them to do work for them. So that has been an area that has been great. Next one, Tim.
All right, so along with working with schools, so we kind of talked about voc rehab, and there's a lot of stuff going on there. We talked about the schools; those are our two biggest funders. But we're also starting to see and are involved in a lot of things with post-secondary institutions, and then funding from various sources for different programs that are post-secondary based. So there is, as Seth mentioned earlier, in WIOA, in the pre-employment transition services, there is funding available for students who are enrolled in college or technical school or some sort of post-secondary training, that they can continue to receive pre-employment transition services. So we actually have a program we'll talk about a little later where we're partnered with a local college and are just in the process of getting voc rehab to help fund some of that program. We're actually working with students on campus, things like time management, things like that. So we'll talk more about that in a little bit. These post-secondary type programs are thankfully and finally popping up all over the place. To really provide some supplemental supports on campus for students to help prepare them better for going to post-secondary education and training. We're also seeing an influx of interns coming and helping us here at our local office. We have, 22 some interns. We don't have 22, we have like 6. But we have a lot of interns right now, and they're learning about what a SIL is and doing some great work. We're finding great inroads with professors. Professors who are interested in making their classrooms more accessible, helping students achieve the learning that they want to achieve, and we're making those connections more than ever. And I know there are several other great programs around the country that are really doing good work in this area. We're doing sensitivity training to would-be teachers, and we're also, there are just so many opportunities for a college campus. We, for a while, hosted one of our programs on a local college campus where we had high school students going to the college campus every day and taking part in training and seminars, but also taking part in work experiences on the college campus. And it was for students who were interested in some sort of post-secondary education. And so they were getting, orientated to the college environment, and at the same time that they were learning some work skills and learning how to do things like FAFSA forms and all that great stuff. So there's just a lot going on, and more coming with post-secondary. It seems like the opportunities are endless. Hey, Tim, go ahead.
And then really looking at other funding and partnering options. Again, it's all about those relationships and who can get involved. And and can they be good board members and all those kind of things. You know, that whole partnering and relationship piece is just so huge. You know, we have found the social clubs have been really beneficial to us. You know, we had a board member that was president of the Rotary, and really our president of one of our local Rotaries, and he really did a lot for us to raise funds through them, to get the word out about the sills and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, that whole piece was huge. Different foundations, there's a lot of different foundations out there for, you know, you're looking for a lot more around education, transition, all that type of things. Lots of different grants. Our grant actually started, we started with our program through a grant through our Developmental Disabilities Council. And that was kind of really what set all this off. You know, they got it, and they got what we were doing. And it really, that's where it all began for us. Businesses, you know, on so many levels, you know, they can provide places for, you know, funding. They can provide donations for us, volunteers. They can provide, like, for us, for job coaching places to go for job coaching, all kinds of stuff like that. Other nonprofits, and being able to work with other nonprofits. You know, like, we always see the SIL as, you know, trying almost non-competitive and really wanting to do what's best for the consumer, even if it was another program. And being able to work with other agencies, other nonprofits in that regard. And really, when it comes down to doing grants and stuff like that, you know, people want the partnerships. You know, the funders want the partnerships because they want the most bang for their buck. They want to be able to reach out to as much as possible. You know, we've done a lot of fundraising. We've done a lot of young adults have done fundraising, and we've done things here like our gala that has raised a lot of money for you know, our transition and employment services. And you know, one of the other areas that we've really found too that has been very beneficial is that whole legislative piece. And developing partnerships there and getting to know the legislators and letting them know what your SIL is and what you're doing. You know, they've actually you know, been able to provide not only some funding for us, but they've also done some other really neat stuff too, like speak at our gala or come and talk to our one of our local legislators has a disability himself, so he would come in and talk to our young adults as well. So, you know, there are lots of different options when you get into the legislative realm, and a really important one that we feel. Next, Tim.
All right. Here we are at our first question break. So let me just remind you all, you can type your questions in the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. Or if you're using the full screen cart, you can type it out there. I don't see anyone there but the captioner and I, but that's an option if any of you need it. And we've got a few questions, so let me start with those in the order they came in. So first question, what's the best way to work with DVR?
Good question.
What do you think, Joe?
Well, I've been throwing out this for a while now, and I'm sorry if anybody on the call has heard this before, but really, for us, we were fortunate to have that relationship with VR. But as I see still starting up programming around the country, there's two big ways that I see that folks are tackling it. One, they're looking at grant opportunities provided through the Department of Labor and Industry in their state, and looking for things like innovation and expansion grants to allow them to start some programming and get some funding below. The other big piece is dipping their toes into the pre-employment transition services through OVR. So that's what we're referring to as Pre-ETS. So folks are doing anything from starting with just doing group presentations in schools. So you're developing a curriculum. The main areas for Pre-ETS are, you know, obviously vocational stuff, but also independent living skills, self-advocacy are a part of that too. So we're seeing SILs develop curriculum, then being contracted with Voc Rehab to go into schools and provide presentations. It's a very good funding stream. You get paid, in most states, you get paid per student. And that's a great way to kind of build up your services. You know, you can do a couple presentations a week or whatever the case may be, until you can build it up and potentially fund a staff person and go from there. So, you know, there's a lot of different avenues. If you have a contentious relationship with your local VR, you got to first break down that wall, and that can be easier said than done. So.
And yeah, and that may just be it may be a tough conversation, and being able to go in there and say, hey, we want to have a positive relationship and work with you, because again, the benefit is all about the consumer. And I mean, you may not see eye to eye, and we don't even see eye to eye with our local VR all the time. And that's, that's kind of a given, but we're able to work through that because it's in the best interest of the consumer.
Right. One of the things that I think helped us is that, and I'm not bragging here at all, but like me coming to the SIL with a voc rehab background helped, because I was able to speak the VR language, and I knew a lot of the counselors. If you can find somebody and bring them to your SIL that has that voc rehab background and has some of those connections, I think that did help us, because I think just naturally we were able to have some very real conversations right from the start, and to let them know what was working and what they liked and what they didn't like too.
Okay. So a similar question, also from Dagger. Not just DVR, but how do I work with other agencies that work with youth and break down that barrier of territoriality, of my consumer versus the other consumer? How do we collaborate with those agencies so the consumer just gets the services? And how do we get through the resistance from those agencies? Any tips there?
Yeah, keep being who you are. that's the real thing. We've always found, as Seth said a little bit earlier, we don't treat anything competitively. We invite other agencies to all of our events. We invite, if there's, working with a certain employer, we're always the one to take the high road and to say, hey, let's figure this out. What can we do to help? All those kinds of things. Over the years, that has helped. Does it always help? Are there always going to be those agencies that just don't want to do and work with you and maybe don't do things in the way they should be done? Absolutely. But best you can, just always take the high road and keep being a SIL. Keep being that resource for everybody.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. And that, it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that might take time, and it's really developing that culture. And I think that's something that we've done here, and being able to work with the different agencies that are here or in the Lehigh Valley. And I think there used to be a little bit more contention and fighting over things, but we understand that there is room for everybody, and the consumer might want a particular service over another, and that's all right. The best thing you can do is do you as best as you can do, and be top notch, and just keep plugging along. I think that's probably what we have really done.
Okay, great. All right, a couple people asked during the last section what I&E was. So, and I typed out in the Q&A tab that it's Innovation Expansion Funds.
Yeah.
But I promised that we would say that out loud during the break as well.
Absolutely, and it's typically funding that comes through the Department of Labor.
All right, next question is, can you talk more about your approach with schools and how those funding opportunities were developed?
Yeah, and that has come in a couple different ways. We're currently doing stuff with VR and being able to get to schools in that way through group presentations. But early on, and kind of how we started our work getting into schools was, we saw the need. When we started off our first young adult group, we saw the need to be able to increase that group. So I really tried to get out as much as possible and just talk to teachers and students and everybody that would listen to me, especially in school districts, and had a little presentation that we could take in there and really promote the SIL, promote transition services and all that kind of thing. And then at the same time, we also had a board member who was a special education lawyer who saw what we were doing in transition, knew what we did as far as independent living skills, and really had the bright idea of, hey, this school district's having a tough time providing this particular service. Is that something that we as a SIL can do? And we were like, absolutely, let's do it. Let's contract with them and see what we can do. So that really took that school, took that work to another level. And then from there, we're constantly doing outreach and providing really good services and saying what we could do for school districts. And And we really try to keep that positive level as well. Because we need school districts, and school districts really need information and resources. So we really try to keep it on a even keel there too.
All right, great. Okay, let's see. Next question comes from Colleen Starkloff, who asks, this sounds like a completely IDD focused transition program. Is that true, guys?
No, and I'm glad that was pointed out, because we certainly didn't want to make it sound like that. I think as I'm reading, well, Tim, if you want to read the rest of the question.
Sure. So well done, guys. But however, what about the use of WIOA funding for transitioning high school youth with disabilities to work who don't need supported employment options? Yeah. Youth who are college, trade, and tech school bound, WIOA should support them as well, but with services tailored to their specific needs.
Yeah, so that is a great question. And again, I'm sorry if we made it sound like it was completely IDD focused. We're doing a lot of work for anybody, any disability. So, you know, we're talking about, we have some newer services like job mentoring, job retention that are specifically for consumers who don't need supported employment necessarily, but they're looking at, you know, assistance with interview skills, things like that. I also mentioned, and I know we were talking fast, but a lot of the post-secondary programs that are popping up, and a couple of them that we're specifically a part of, where we're helping prepare students for post-secondary education, and also supporting them as they need it on campus throughout the school year. So we provide a structured study lounge that students can use, and we also work one-on-one with students, you know, through individual appointments to work on whatever it is they need to work on. And currently, we're in negotiations with Folk Rehab to have that funded through WIOA and Pre-ETS. So I agree, there's a lot more that needs to happen there, but I am excited to see that there's a lot more coming and things popping up everywhere.
Okay, great. All right, we've got a few more questions lined up, but I'm looking at the clock, and I think that I want to make sure that we get through all the content. We do have another Q&A break. So what I will do is, I know some of the questions that came up were actually about pieces of the programs that we're going to go into more detail on now. So let's go through that. If those questions remain, we'll start with them when we get to the final Q&A break. So I'm going to go ahead to slide 16 and turn it back over to Seth.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Tim. Sorry. 16. This is LBCL transition and employment programming. You know, there's all of our different programs here that we're going to talk about in our next few slides. So if you don't mind going to the next one, Tim, we'll go there, and we'll start off with what we call our S2L group, our school to life group, and this is the group that really kind of started this all for us. In fact, with a grant from our Developmental Disabilities Council. And initially it was our S2L group and our Real World Lehigh Valley Summer Program, which we'll talk about on the next slide. But you know, those two programs are broken down to be their own individual. And now the S2L group is this year-long program for young adults who are aged 14 to 25, who have different types of goals: employment, independent living, leadership, social, whole 9 yards. And the group meets 2 to 3 times a month, and either here at the SIL or in the community. And really what this group does is, in the beginning of the year, they sit down and they talk about all the different things that they want to do. This group is really meant to be for them. This is their group. They decide what they want to do. It's youth-led, youth-driven. And, you know, they talk about the social things that they want to do. So, you know, we want to do a Halloween party. We want to go out and get Japanese food. We want to go see a concert, whole 9 yards. We also look at different things like, you know, where can we go out and volunteer in the community, because we feel it's important to give back. Like we'll help out at the Autism Walk, and we'll do other things like that in the community as well. We'll have presentations about things like advocacy. And I mean, really, you name it, if the group wants to do it, we try to do everything we can to do it. Now, there is a fee for that program. And we're also doing lots of fundraising as well. So we actually have developed a mini micro business that helps to bring money in to do things for the group. And we'll also do things like meetings for parents, and we'll have guest speakers and all that kind of thing. The group has its own website. You can check it out, lvcil.org/S2L. We have Facebook, all that kind of things as well. So feel free to check it out. But there really is that group dynamic that we really learned so much for, that really took us into all of the other programming that we did. And really that group has developed quite a lot.
I'll just throw in that this is a program that we're currently also in negotiations with Voc Rehab to provide some funding for, because it meets so many of the WIOA pre-employment transition service goals. Tim, you can go to the next slide.
So initially, our summer program, it's always been called the Real World Lehigh Valley, and it was initially set up to go along while it was grant funded with S2L. So it had the year-long component and it had the summer component. But the Real World Lehigh Valley, that ended up changing and morphing over the years too, going from grant to fee for service, where our local VR office saw how really it was really fit with what they were interested in, and thought to provide that for their consumers as well. So and that's where the base funding comes from now. And it is a 6-week, 3-day-a-week program. It really focuses on employment. It has different speakers and all kinds of stuff like that. A lot of hands-on activities. It's promoting things like independent living, a lot of stuff with employment related, leadership, all that type of thing. Now, one of the really great things that we've been able to do, based on our being able to develop relationships with partners in the community, was to have the program hosted on site at Dorney Park and Wildwater Kingdom. That is our local amusement park, and they have been really great to work with on so many levels, and they provide opportunities for our young adults to host space for a curriculum where we teach skills on how to get a job and how to keep a job, but then also have the young adults go into the park and learn hands-on work skills in the park. There's so much going on there. It's like a mini city. There's so many different things that happen there. And it's cool because they hire between 3,000 and 4,000 people every year. And a lot of those are young adults. So you have natural peer support. And it's almost a rite of passage for a lot of young adults in the Lehigh Valley here to work at Dorney Park. So to have that kind of relationship, these past 2 years have been great. It's probably one of the most significant things that I've been a part of in my 25 years of doing this kind of work. Next one, Tim. So we had our S2L group going and our summer program going early on, and really we saw the need to be able to get out and promote those programs, to promote the center here just in general. So we developed a presentation, and a very interactive presentation based on the game of life. It was called "Have You Thought About Life?" So we would take that into schools, into classrooms, and really I would typically take a young adult along with me to help make that presentation into the classrooms. And we would really go out and talk about different things that a young adult would need to do to be ready for when school was over, to when they got into the adult world. And it's a very interactive, very fun, and that actually morphed into a lot of different things as well. Like we ended up having 2 local transition conferences called "Have You Thought About Life" transition conferences, where we were able to promote that thinking as well. So that was really really something that we found out. We need to get out and promote our transition services, and having young adults there to do that in a fun and interactive way was really what we needed. Next one, Tim.
So we're still back about 8 or 9 years here in the past, and when we started out stuff. So when you read this slide, realize that this is how things developed. This next slide about career path occurring in about 2000. So this was us, well, it was before I was here. I got here when they started this program. But before I was here, Seth and Amy were seeing things going on in Lehigh Valley, specifically in the realm of supported employment and job coaches. And they saw a need to, well, they offered to provide some training for job coaches from other agencies, things like, for even down to professionalism, but, an empowerment approach and things like that. And it was at that time that coincidentally, there was an innovation and expansion grant, an I&E grant, that allowed for some startup programming specifically focused on young adults. So Seth and the team here wrote the grant to start a supported employment program focused on young adults who were about to or had just graduated from high school, to try to capture people. And remember, this is before all the pre-ETS stuff. So this was an effort by the SIL and our local voc rehab to start catching young adults as they were leaving high school, those who had a goal of getting a job and getting competitive employment. So somehow Seth and Amy and Greg, our grant writer, convinced voc rehab to do some really unique things that are above and beyond what a typical supported employment program provides. So we got person-centered planning written into the services. That to me was pretty revolutionary when I came and started here at the SIL, because to have person-centered planning and voc rehab paying for it was pretty exciting. So, true person-centered planning, we use a combination of the MAPS and PAFS models, if you're familiar with those, but planning that is all about consumer control. Consumer planning, here's the job I want to explore, here's the job I want to check out, here's the job I'm interested in now, but here's also the job that I'm interested in getting to. So that was really exciting. They also persuaded voc rehab to allow us to do a skills training before going out into the community and doing community-based work assessments and vocational assessments and all those kinds of things. So we incorporated an 8-week skills training, kind of a mini boot camp for students coming out of high school to help them develop some skills and preparedness for the difference between school and then getting a competitive job, and the differences between those two environments, and so that they were fully prepared for that. And then we were going out and doing community-based work assessments, vocational assessments with young adults in their areas of interest. Nobody was telling them, oh, well, you should really, try this stocking job. No, it was really from a SIL approach. It was, hey, I want to be a vet someday. Okay, let's go check that out. And voc rehab allowed us to do that for a very short time. 6 months we had to show that we could get some good results out of that. And at the end of 6 months, they said, okay, we're good. We're seeing what we want to see out of this, and we're going to go fee for service with you. So we developed a fee for service contract after that first 6 months, and that program has been going strong ever since. We started with 25 young adults. We are now at any given time active consumers in that program as anywhere from 250 to 260, and it just keeps growing. So it's really exciting to be a part of. We've also added some new services like job mentoring, and also provide job development and job coaching on site if it's needed and wanted. So there you go. Go ahead, Tim. Oh, I jumped way ahead. I already talked about the skills training. So Tim, we kind of already talked about this. If you want to go ahead. All right. And then all of a sudden, we're doing this S2L program. We're doing this railroad program. We're doing career path. We also started some school-based services in the meantime. And then boom, voc rehab said, hey, we're going to start paying for similar things for students that are in school. And we got really excited because, this, as Seth mentioned earlier, the pre-employment transition services, there's a lot of good that can come out of it. It's got its quirks, don't get me wrong, it's got its issues. But one of the great things is that we're reaching young adults in school at a much earlier age and starting to explore their career interests, helping them find paid work experiences that they're interested in, helping them find job shadowing experiences that they're interested in. So, a student says, I want to be, a CNA someday. Well, let's go check that out. I mean, let's go hang out with a CNA and see what they do every day to really explore that opportunity. That has been some of the most meaningful stuff we've done. because folks are coming out of those and really having a much clearer picture as if that's something they want to continue to pursue. They're also allowing us to do travel training. So learning how to use public transportation. We have a bus system of sorts here in Allentown, and learning how to use that, learning how to use paratransit and door-to-door service, learning how to use things like Lyft and Uber. So that's been a really beneficial part of it as well. And then last but not least, the group presentations. You know, what Seth was just talking about, how he was going in and presenting to schools. Well, now we're able to go in and do the very similar things, but to do it funded through Voc Rehab, which is really helping us. And it's like a win-win-win, because it helps us provide and meet young adults and students and provide them some services, but it also is getting us into schools and meeting teachers, and giving us an outlet for some outreach as well.
Go to the next one, Tim, please.
Hey, it's me, I'm back. So I'll get these slides down eventually. But so one of the other things that happened just before all the pre-ETS stuff got really big, we developed a program very similar to Project Search. If you know about Project Search, Seth mentioned it earlier, something to definitely check out. But we wanted to develop a Project Search type program with a much more SIL approach to it. So we developed a program in partnership with Voc Rehab and our local intermediate unit. For those of you who don't have intermediate units in your states, Pennsylvania has intermediate units, and they're contracted by school districts to provide certain services. So they could be working with students on work experiences during school hours and things like that. So the way this program works is that the students go to a local business. Right now we're working with Cedarbrook Nursing Home. They go every day for their school day. So they're there 5 days a week, every day for the school year. And what they're doing there is they spend a portion of their day in like a skills training classroom. So they're learning about things like conflict management and all those fun things that they have to know about. And then they spend the rest of their day working in the facility doing various jobs. Over the course of a year, they do about 4 or 5 different jobs at the facility to kind of determine what they want to do. Cool thing about this is the LBCIL, us, we provide 1 staff. The IU provides 2 staff. And then the school districts and Voc Rehab pay for it together. So it is a true partnership, collaborative effort between school districts, Voc Rehab, and 2 contractors, us and the IU. And so we snuck person-centered planning into this program too, and VR was like, sure, we like that stuff. And then we also snuck in being able to take young adults out to explore different jobs that aren't just in the facility. So if a student says, I like what I'm doing here, but I'd really like to try something completely different, we have the opportunity to take them out into the community and try some different jobs as well. So it's customized. It's a really cool program. We're looking to expand this program into some different counties very soon.
Next one, Tim, please. And just some of the other pre-employment transition services that we're looking at through an agreement with our local VR office. They want their version of an S2L group, which we're working towards. Because it just fits so much with those goals. Individual workplace readiness training, which is really huge, and we see a lot of our OVR counselors asking for that type of thing. That could be any individualized kind of that's employment focused. And really, we're thrilled that the possibility of having standalone person-centered planning services. If that happens, that would be absolutely huge. Next one, Tim, please. I know we talked a little bit about this already, but our life services, which are school-based services, which are a partnership with school districts, and that is really an a la carte menu where we can provide any individualized services that a student may need. Sometimes a school district can't provide that service for whatever reason, or maybe they're on a legal where maybe they're looking for alternate kind of education services. So they may look to us for that kind of thing. But we've done everything like person-centered planning to individualized services out, travel training, employment, you name it. But the thing that's unique about that is everything is different. All of the contracts are different, all the reporting is different, all the billing is different. So there's, you know, all of that kind of to take into consideration when you're doing that as well. Next one, Tim, please.
All right, so now we get to talk about one of our programs that is working at a local community college. So we're on site at a local community college. We have 2 staff that work at the community college every single day, and they're working with students who are part of the SEED program. You can go to the, you can just Google LTRIC SEED and it'll come up. It's a pretty cool program, but we're working with the community college's students. They are, you know, students at the college, and they're part of this program to help them maybe with some things that aren't provided by the school. So maybe it's a student who hasn't attempted to go to college because they maybe struggle with time management or something. You know, they procrastinate a lot. They have a hard time getting their lessons done and their assignments done for their classes. Our staff will work with them. You know, maybe it's downloading an app on their phone to help them prioritize. All sorts of different things that can be done there. So it's all of that kind of stuff, helping them advocate with their professors, helping them develop communication scripts to talk to their professors about their needs, how to ask for potential accommodations, all those kinds of things right there on the campus. So it's a really exciting program. Right now, it is partnered with the community college. So it's us and the community college. But because of Pre-ETS and WIOA funding, Voc Rehab should really be involved with this program too. So we've been working with them to get them involved with it because it is a pretty expensive program. So we want to try to supplement some of those costs. Okay, go ahead, Tim.
And I know we've talked a lot about person-centered planning here, and that being integrated in a lot of our programming and possibly even doing some of it individually. But it has been probably one of the most significant parts of transition-related work that we've done. You know, like person-centered planning is really, you know, it's that whole exploration, brainstorming, planning, you know, and setting of goals. It's really all meant to be positive, you know, which is different from an IEP. IEPs are more deficit-driven. Person-centered planning is more about what someone hopes to do, what they dream to do, and how can we do that by setting goals based on all these different areas. You know, it's really providing it's a living document and providing a clear vision to the young adult, and that's so in such a tough time, you know. And we've had young adults and parents tell us that person-centered planning has been probably one of the most important transition-related activity that their family has done. So we truly believe in that to the point where we've used it for strategic planning for the center at this point. So we owe a lot to person-centered planning and what that has done. Next one, Tim, please. So, and then, I mean, we're involved in a whole heck of a lot of other things. You know, we've done research and consultation, and we've had a young adult, and we finally got a young adult on our board, which is awesome. We have parents of young adults on our board as well. We work with different groups, like check out PYLN, Pennsylvania Youth Leadership Networks, for some of the leadership and inclusive leadership that they do. You know, our transition programming has been what got our autism waiver supports coordination program up and going, and really that has boomed as well. You know, like there's different other groups and trainings and outreach and boards, and you know, it has really taken us to a whole other place. Next one, Tim. So really, we wanted to talk a little bit about, and I know we're trying to go through things a little bit here so we can get back to some of the questions here, but we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we've learned and kind of have taken that, because so much can be gained from that. So our next couple slides kind of deal with that. We'll try to go through those quick because like I said, we want to get back to some questions as well. But you know, just to go through some of these, you know, we really learned so much from that group dynamic, and young adults learning from peer to peer has been such a positive force. You know, that we call it positive peer pressure. When a young adult has the notion of, hey, I got a job, I'm going to come into the group and talk to them about, you know, talk to the other young adults about, hey, I just got a job and it's pretty cool and I'm making money, and well, the other young do that too. You know, so there's so much of that kind of dynamic that happens when you're working in a group, and the young adults want to learn from each other. So, you know, we've really found that really as a benefit. Transition taking a village, you know, that's why it kind of goes back to, we know that it's important to work with VR and other agencies and all that kind of thing, because you never know what a young adult, what a consumer is going to need to be able to get to where they need to. So it takes all of us, you know, and transition is so huge. It's every part of life. So it really needs to be looked at in that kind of regard. We try to understand that parents are transitioning as well. You know, they're going from this whole entitlement way of thinking to now you have to qualify and apply for everything that your young adults taking part in. So that is really a different dynamic for a parent as they're kind of going. We see it every day here when you know, parents are starting to talk to us of students who are trying to treat us like school districts, and they can't really do that. So it can be really tough, and parents are trying to learn what's out there and do what's best for their young adult, and trying to figure out what they can do if they're not there anymore. You know, is their young adult ready to be on their own or be able to do what they're supposed to do? You know, we've really been fortunate here because I think that we've created a culture here to young adults. We have young adults here every day, and you know, that whole culture is the young adults and youth have their own culture, and you have to be open to that. You can't force them to think any other way. You know, that's what they're coming with, and that's what you kind of have to be. You have to meet them on their terms and what they're doing. I used to like to use this example of do you have to use the potty before we go? And I just think this is a neat story. Because we've been out and we do presentations all over the place for young adults and parents and all kinds of stuff like that. We just ended up doing a really great presentation about empowerment and advocacy and all that kind of stuff. And someone ended, you know, we were taking pictures at the end of it and really having a good time and looping it up. And someone came up to the young adults there and said, who needs to use the potty before we go? And that kind of was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that, you know, like, and for us, this that notion of that language is so important. Young adults want to be talked to and treated like young adults and not like little children, you know, so that's really, really important. You know, and the other one too, I'll say here too, is about, you know, as we've been meeting with groups out around about transition, you know, people have wondered, how do you do youth programming and not do any on evenings and weekends? And our answer to that is usually you don't. You have to meet the young adults where they are. Unless you're doing school-based stuff, you know, when do a young adult when do they want to do stuff? You know, I used to do stuff on a Saturday morning. Nobody wants to do stuff on a Saturday morning. Young adults want to sleep in. So, Tim, if you don't mind going to the next one.
All right, so we're flying. We know we're up against the clock here to make sure that we get some questions in. So, but as Seth said, as said many times, outreach, outreach, outreach. You're going to develop your transition programming or enhance your transition programming by creating relationships. And the only way to do that is to get out there. And I know that's a hard thing to do when you got the day-to-day, everything that we do at a SIL, but you got to make time for it and you got to get out there. Blend financial and programmatic needs. That's the word there is dreamical. And what that means is we dream about the program we want and that our consumers want, and that we think would meet the needs of our community, and then we find funding for it. That's what dreamical means. So that we kind of go from that aspect and do everything we can to fund the program that our consumers want to be a part of. Be willing to put in the time. Seth and I, you know, we work a lot of hours, and you got to be ready for that if you're going to do this kind of stuff, because you're going to be working nights and weekends and all over the place. Take young adults wherever you go. So whenever we go to conferences, we don't go by ourselves. We bring young adults with us, and half the time they're presenting, we're not. So parents and young adults want to hear about successes, absolutely. Keep in mind that parents are experts. You know, I know sometimes parents can infringe on services for their young adults. They can make things more difficult, but also remember that they're the experts. And that in a lot of ways they can make things a lot better too. I think, you know, we're always trying to find that balance with a parent who's not involved or a parent who's overly involved. Just keep in mind that the parents are the experts, and as Seth said earlier, they're transitioning too, and they're learning about the young adults, and they're learning about all these new services and different things that they have to deal with. We just always try to be mindful and respect parents in everything we do. At the same time, our focus is on the consumer and what they want. Take some risks. We've taken a lot of risks here at WCL, and some have paid off and some have flopped. So take some risks and get yourself out there. Work in transition can lead to other opportunities for yourself. That's absolutely true. Our work in transition has led to so many different things, so many different opportunities, not just that have benefited everything we do. Go ahead, Tim.
Something to keep in mind that transition is as individual as the person is. It always comes back to that consumer. Where do they want to go? Where do they want to be? And how can we help them get there? So it is so individualized. There is money out there. You know, I think this is a big topic. There's ways to find money. There's ways to go about it. Foundations, donations, so many different options. Collaborate. You know, I can't say enough about that. Those relationships are super important. Sometimes you got to be able to give a lot to get what you want, but possibly in the long run, it will pay off. You know, we have seen that. Sometimes we have done things because they were just important to do, and in the long run, it helped us to do other things, or maybe brought money in other ways. You know, so it really needs to be explored in that way. You know, sometimes I know we've said this before. Sometimes another program might be the best option for the consumer, and that's okay. You know, it comes back down to consumer control. And training. That's one thing that has really grown considerably here at the SIL. We've really had to look at a lot of different types of training and develop much in this area, and really stay true to the IL philosophy. You know, that has been one of probably our main things of every day, trying to stay true with everything we have going on, staying true to that independent living philosophy. Next one, Tim. And you know, be positive yet real with young adults. I think this is really an important one. And using natural consequences in learning moments. You know, for sometimes a young adult has not been talked to in a very real way and shown, hey, if you're going to do this, then this is going to happen. You know, it comes back down to that independent living thinking. You know, and I mean, you get into schools and some of that other stuff, stigma that goes along with that, and you know, and we have found that by challenging and putting it out there to young adults and telling them in real ways has really benefited them. Employment is huge. Employment gets a lot of funding, but what do young adults want? Young adults really typically want the social piece. You know, we find that a lot, probably more so than anything. You know, young adults want to work, they want to bring in money, but they also want boyfriends, girlfriends, relationships, wives, husbands. You know, it is just a natural part of life, and that is exactly what they want as well. We talk a lot about living outside the box, and that's really where we've been with a lot of our programming and developing and doing different types of things. You know, to the point where we're really trying to have fun with it all as we're doing things as well. You know, our programming, the way our approach, we really try to take a fun approach to that as well. And, you know, we have really found, you know, and an important thing to highlight is that young adults, they're your future consumers. They're your future staff. They're your future board members. And really, that is why I think we feel that SILs are a perfect fit for doing all of this transition work. You know, it is there. You get the young adults while they're younger, and teaching them all of this independent living thinking. It really propels them for the future. And you know, that's why we can't say enough about SILs doing work in transition.
Woo! All right. Nice job. Well, don't take a rest yet, because we got a lot of questions lined up for you guys.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so let's get through these. Okay, so starting with the questions that we didn't finish from last time. Dagger says, pre-ETS in our area is already being contracted into the school district. By the time they reach our center, they're too old. Do you have any other ideas?
Yeah, so we are seeing this happen even in Pennsylvania. Things are getting contracted to the IUs now. The other places that you can dip your toes in the water for pre-ETS is to provide paid work experiences for young adults. So you could potentially provide them at your center, but you could also develop some relationships with employers and develop paid work experiences for the young adults out there. You know, the nice thing about fee-for-service is that you take what you can handle, you know, I know that's probably easier said than done, but you really have to be able to say, hey, I have one staff person working on this. We've got 3 work experiences going, and we can't take any referrals right now, and work through it that way. So I'd love to talk more about that. I don't know who asked that question, but you know, if you want to give us a phone call, just let us do so.
Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. Meg wants to know if you guys get paid directly by any schools or if the payment always comes through VR.
Yeah, we definitely, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's, yeah, we contract with school districts to provide particular services. You know, a certain amount of hours of this particular skill, and it's all written in our contract and our service plan, so that schools will pay us to provide those services. Yes.
You guys mentioned that you do sensitivity training for would-be teachers, and Kwanele wants to know, what is that?
Yes, that is great. We typically do sensitivity trainings. It's one of our core goals, that we have to provide sensitivity trainings for the community. And we've always felt that taking sensitivity training into colleges and into different programs, to teach teachers about disability and the SIL way and IL philosophy, was really important. And you know, and to be able to get that information to them, so that maybe when they go and are teachers, maybe they would have higher expectations, that they'd be a little bit more sensitive to the disability culture. And so that's really where we come from. We have found that as very powerful, and great opportunities to take that sensitivity training into those teachers. Get them before they're teachers.
Thanks, Seth. All right. I think you all you probably addressed this during the examples you gave, but K. Marco says, you're saying that VR pays you to go into the schools to do group presentations. If so, can you elaborate on this? Yeah. I think you gave some good examples. Anything else you want to say about that?
I mean, just a quick summary is there's some areas in WIOA that VR is to focus on and provide training for young adults. It's vocational stuff, obviously, but there's also self-advocacy and independent living skills. So we develop curriculum in those areas, and we contract with VR to go into schools and provide those presentations. So.
Okay. All right. Dagger with another tough question. How do you deal with youth and transportation? So you guys have all these great programs and events. How do you get people around the area?
It's always a good question.
It's $1 million question. That's all around the country right there.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously we work individually with folks to get to our center. We try to hold events in the community at common locations. So, you know, if we do a social event, we're doing it in a place that folks are used to getting to, things like that. But, you know, anyway, whether it's using the fixed route bus that we have here, whether it's door-to-door service, we've even dipped our toes and started doing trainings for Lyft and Uber use, all those things, right?
Yeah, and I think for some of those rural areas, it can be tougher, you know, like that's like why another reason to get in good with schools. People know where schools are and can often get to them easier than they can maybe to our center. You know, so there's options to it, but that is the $1 million question. That is something that everybody is dealing with, I think, around the country.
Okay. All right. Michaelak wants to know, do you guys have a STEP program through VR?
I'm not sure. Not that I'm aware of.
There's a STEP program in one of our local high schools, but I don't know if it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I would love information about that, though. If you could send us that, that'd be great. Yeah. Or can I Google that or something like that? STEP.
Okay. All right, thanks. And they add, also my area has transition programs in the schools that already do this type of work. So how would you handle that?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's what the IUs, the intermediate units, do in our schools in the area. And the key to it is to remind them, there was some resistance from the schools and the IUs initially because they thought we were like broaching on their territory and we're going to take over their jobs or something. But we always remind folks that the pre-ETS stuff, the pre-employment transition stuff through WIOA is meant to supplement what is happening in the schools. So we're not taking their jobs. Our focus is to, if they're not if the young adult doesn't have a paid work experience, we're going to help them find a paid work experience, and maybe it's in the evenings and on the weekends. And we're going to help them do it that way, that it's outside of school hours. So we're not trying to infringe on the transition programs that are already in schools. We're trying to help supplement and bridge the services.
Well, and that's kind of what a SIL does, right? I mean, as far as they do their core services, and then they do everything, they do other programs and services unique to their area. So maybe you're doing something that is maybe a little bit different, or maybe you're building off of that. You're starting somewhere and then building to get to that point as well.
Okay. All right. Thanks. M. Michaelak adds, it's through the DHS DRS VR program.
Okay.
It is indeed Googleable. I just Googled it.
Nice.
Secondary transition experience programs, at least in the state of Illinois, which is the one I happen to see. I didn't have much time, but
yeah, we'll be definitely looking for
out.
that.
Yes,
Thank you.
Okay. Next question, a comment first from Colleen and the folks at the Starcliffe Disability Institute. Thanks for your great work, guys. We'll be calling you to find out more. And they added, is this funding only available to SILs?
No, funding for the voc rehab stuff that we do is available to any agency, at least in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, you can sign a standard agreement as an agency to work with voc rehab. And then as far as what we do with the school districts that's funded by them, that is open to any agency too. So it really, it's not SIL dependent. The core dollars are, that's a whole different ball of wax, but you know, as far as what we're doing through Pre-ETS and the supplemental services that we're doing, that's open to anybody.
Okay, great. All right, a couple more questions. I've got one here on the chat from Nicole. Nicole asks, so could VR circumvent you and provide the WIOA services in-house? There's been some discussion about them not contracting that out.
Great question. So as far as I'm aware, the last time we spoke to folks in Maryland, that's what their VR is doing. They're doing all the services in-house. I can assure you that that is going to be different from state to state. I know in Pennsylvania that will probably not happen because the VRs can't keep staff. So they need to contract those services out. And again, you know, it depends on the state is what it comes down to, but they can certainly do that if they want to. They certainly provide their own in-house services, but the trend has been for them to contract out more of their in-house services over the years than take them back.
Okay. And M. Michaelak had a follow-up question. What's the funding called through VR? So you guys have a few programs. Is there a single funding stream?
Well, yeah, so for anything that's for students that are in high school or post-secondary school, voc rehab calls that pre-employment transition services, and that's through the WIOA Act, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. But then if they're out of school and they're out of all school and they're older than 21, they just have an adult service funding stream, and that's coming through the state and federal government. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. Yeah, good explanation. All right. That is the end of our questions.
Awesome.
And that's the end of our presentation. We've got a couple minutes left. Let me go ahead here to the next slide, slide 34. Again, here's the link to the survey. But again, when I close the platform today in just about 45 seconds, you'll see that evaluation pop up on your screen, and I hope you'll fill it out. It was also, the link to the survey was also included in the confirmation email that you received with the connection instructions last week. Remember, if someone else in your SIL registered for the training, that confirmation email and the eval link went to them. So maybe they could forward it to you if you're in a small group today. So we've got just about 30 seconds left. I want to thank Seth and Joe. Again, you all, just an outstanding job pulling all of this together and some great real world examples, no pun intended, for how a SIL can really make the best of these programs and make it work for their consumers and bring some money in the door at the same time, and complete some of the requirements of the new core service for SILs around supporting youth in transition as well. So thanks so much for being willing to share what you all have built with us. And thanks to all of you too. We had a great audience on today's call. You guys were really engaged during the Q&A breaks. We always appreciate that. Let us know what you thought during the evaluation session. If you have questions that come up, whether it's later today or in 3 months, I hope that we'll hear from you. Seth and Joe were kind enough to share their connection, or excuse me, what do you call that stuff? Your emails.
Contact information.
Contact information. Geez, that's not a difficult word, is it? On the third slide there, and my email, and I'm always available for these types of questions, is just tim@ncil.org, tim@nickel.org. It couldn't be easier. So please do send us your follow-up questions. We'd love to hear from you and help you get this stuff figured out. So with that, we're going to close the call. But thanks for being with us. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.